In this lesson, we'll create a graph using some quick tricks and some built-in tools in Illustrator for creating grids. Okay, so I just really want to quickly create a few different kind of square grids for us. So really easily, Illustrator has made a tool that we can make a rectangular grid. So if you go ahead and choose that and just start to draw with it, you can see that the default is actually pretty nice. Now I want mine to be rectangular just like this, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of scale this down just a little bit like that and have a shape that looks just kind of something like this. So I want to go ahead and add a stroke to that. So I'm going to come over here, bring my stroke to the front, then we'll come over here to our swatches, grab that second orange swatch over from the right, or maybe we want this one to be blue. I'm going to change it to blue. We've been using a lot of orange lately. And now what I want to do is create a line that's going to track along that grid. Now I could just kind of come in here with the pen tool. I'm just going to hold that down, grab the pen tool, and start clicking and kind of making different shapes like this. But you can see that that looks kind of fake. It doesn't really look like a real graph. So to get enough data to make our graph look like it really fits on here, I want to kind of scale up, and then I'm going to start drawing in a similar way, just kind of zigzagging up and down like you would see on a graph. Now you have to be careful never to zigzag and go backwards like this, because a graph is always going to be moving kind of across time like what we're showing here. So you don't really want to have any kind of a backwards motion, because that doesn't really make sense. So now I've created this huge graph that's way bigger, or huge line that's way bigger than my graph. So what I'm going to do is select this, and I want to change it to a contrasting color. So now I can choose that orange color instead of the blue. And we'll go ahead and grab this and just start to scale that down holding shift. So then I can zoom in here and just hold hit that Z key to bring that up. And then I'm just going to move this down into position so that I can put it on top of my grid. And you can see that now this looks a lot better than something that we might have drawn if we were just trying to get that to kind of fit in that same position. So really looks a lot better, has more data here. And I can go ahead and grab that and make that fit perfectly. I'm just using that direct selection tool, not the selection tool. So grab the direct selection tool for this, and maybe just add a little more variation, maybe pull that up a little bit higher. If you want this to kind of hit on some of those points, you can always change that. And it looks like this line right here goes backwards, so I'm going to pull it forwards just like that. And just make it interesting, you know, just kind of play around with it. But that's a really quick and easy way to make something like this. We could also maybe make it a little bit heavier, so it's a little more contrasty with the lines in the background. So I could have a 3-point stroke and a 1-point stroke on my grid itself. So that looks pretty good. And maybe let's just make 2 more variations of this. So I'm going to just go ahead and hold Alt and click and drag to duplicate the grid a couple of times, and then I'm just going to create some large lines just like I did earlier with the pen tool. So maybe this time the grid I'm going to back up a little bit there just by hitting Control Z. Maybe the grid kind of peaks in the middle and then starts to come back down to the bottom. Maybe it'll climb a little bit, but then they had a bad month, so we'll bring that back down there. And again, it's all about adding diversity to this information. So the more diverse it is, the more interesting it's going to be. So once you're happy with the way that that looks, you can scale it down. We'll choose that contrasting color again and crank that up to a 3-point stroke. And then let's just bring this back down to where it belongs. So put that on top of our grid, zoom in here, and I'm just going to kind of try to find the right position for this. And it's okay if you skew it a little bit too, so I don't even really need to hold shift to get that in there just as perfect as possible, because it still looks good even if it's a little bit squished. So again, that's going to be, you know, just another variation on that grid. Maybe we could put it a little bit higher, so maybe it doesn't start out right at 0 like that one does. And then let's just maybe make one more to kind of just even out our numbers, and let's give this one lots and lots of data. So I'm going to zoom out as big as I can here. Or maybe not quite all the way, maybe just right about there. And then we'll just start doing lots of little ups and downs for this. Maybe this one will peak for a long time at the top. So just kind of go in between a few values here and then kind of start going into some of the valleys. Then maybe goes up again. And then it's just going to tank. We'll have lots of really low points here and then maybe up. And you'll notice that I'm going really fast, so it's hard for me to get as much diversity as I'd like to here. So I may go back in with the direct selection tool and just kind of pull some of those points just to give them a little more diversity, because right now they kind of just appear to all be sort of going at that same direction. But you can see how much easier it makes it by creating this grid really large to begin with and then scaling it down. So I'll go ahead now and scale this way down so that it fits nicely on the little shape that I've created, and we'll zoom in here. And I'll just hit that V key, and this one, you know, just because we made it a little bit differently by getting so much larger, it looks a lot different than our other ones. So just different ways for you to create graphs and grids and have them still all look different just by creating a few different variations with your pen tool really quickly. And again, I didn't use real data there. We just kind of clicked around, and then we'll be able to animate this at some point later on, and you'll just be able to see that growing. And that's part of the reason why we're leaving this as a path and not going in and trying to change that to be an outline of the stroke. So in this lesson, we learned an easy way to create a varied looking path simply by making a large scale path and scaling it down to fit the small ready-made grid.